They said it would end. The virus, the panic, the silence. But what they never told us was that the real infection had already begun. Not in the lungs, but in the cracks of our sanity. In the rot behind society's painted smile. The hospitals emptied, but the screams never stopped. They just went somewhere deeper. This is not a documentary. It's a crime scene. It's a morgue file. It's a confession whispered in the dark corners of the internet, where no light reaches. The official death toll, staggering, yes. But what if it was just the tip of much larger, colder iceberg? What if, in the panic, the system didn't just bend, but broke, leaving the most vulnerable to a fate far more horrifying than the virus itself? In spring 2020, as COVID-19 ravaged Spain, a chilling truth emerged from behind the closed doors of elder care facilities. When military units were deployed to disinfect nursing homes, soldiers made a grim discovery. Elderly people completely abandoned, sometimes even dead in the beds. In Madrid and Catalonia, at the height of the outbreak, staff had fled or were too overwhelmed, leaving ill and dying residents with no assistance. Spain's defense minister confirmed that teams found corpses of the elderly in several facilities, sparking a national outcry and a probe into negligence. The protocols were a nightmare. If a resident died and couldn't be immediately removed due to overwhelmed funeral services, the body was to be left in bed. Patients literally abandoned in death. As if that wasn't enough, Madrid City's morgues could not cope. In an unprecedented, almost surreal move, authorities converted an Olympic-sized ice skating rink into a makeshift morgue for COVID-19 victims. Starting March 24th, 2020, Jesus began delivering coffins to this ice rink, turned into mortuary as Spain's daily death toll climbed into hundreds. The chilling images of an ice arena, once filled with laughter, now filled with the dead, brought home the grotesque scale of the disaster. Across the Atlantic, in the early US epicenter, New York City's peak in April 2020 produced scenes verging on the dystopian. In Brooklyn, residents noticed a foul smell on a residential street. Police responding to a 911 call made a grisly find.
Now to the disturbing discovery of dozens of bodies stored in U-Haul trucks outside of a funeral home because they're just so overwhelmed during the pandemic. And this could be a sign of the trouble that other funeral homes in the tri-state are facing right now.
dozens of decomposing bodies stored in unrefrigerator U-Haul rental trucks outside our funeral home. Liquid seeped from these trucks, and the stench of death hung heavy in the spring air. The funeral director had rented 4 box trucks to hold about 50 corpses after his facility ran out of space. No criminal charges were filed. The funeral homes, like many others, simply had nowhere to send the bodies amid a backlog that stretched for weeks. New York City's daily death count was so high that officials deployed refrigerated tractor trailers as temporary morgues, often parking them on city streets. Passerbys could witness gurneys carrying body bags into these giant coolers in broad daylight. The haunting image of trucks lining the streets, filled with the dead, stands as one of the pandemic's most macabre snapshots. But the horrors didn't stop at the overwhelmed morgues of the West. In India, during the calamitous second wave of 2021, nightmare unfolded on the sacred banks of the Ganges River, a testament to a system utterly broken and a human dignity utterly desecrated. When official crematoriums in Hindi heartland were overwhelmed, desperate families in Uttar Pradesh began burying their dead in the shallow sands of the Ganges riverbank. As weeks passed, evidence of this mass burial practice emerged in ghastly fashion. After heavy rains and river currents eroded the sand, hundreds of corpses surfaced, their clothes shrouds torn, their bodies exposed. Entire stretches of the riverbanks were found littered with shallow graves and partially buried bodies, marked only by bamboo sticks and saffron or red shrouds flapping in the breeze. The air was thick with decay and dead. Most horrifying were the packs of feral dogs. Villagers and local media reported that stray dogs were digging up the makeshift graves and feasting on the decomposing bodies. This is sickening. Dogs are pulling out the dead bodies and later feasting on them. A distraught resident of Prayagraj told reporters, predatory birds and dogs became a common sight, seen feasting on the remains of what we believe to be COVID victims. In 1 week of May 2021, close to 1,000 bodies were either washed up or uncovered along the Ganges in this region. The scenes were so nightmarish and unprecedented that even locals accustomed to traditional river burials were horrified. There were thousands of bodies here, said one witness. The Indian government eventually had to deploy teams to respectfully rebury or cremate these bodies and crack down on the riverbank burials. The images of dogs scavenging human corpses on the secret Ganges sands remains one of the most disturbing, visceral episodes of pandemic's impact in rural India, a horror that few outside that region ever truly comprehended. As if the mass deaths weren't enough, India's second wave brought with it another terrifying scourge, a disease straight out of a nightmare, widely known as black fungus. Mucormycosis, a rare fungal infection, usually harmless, found an opportunistic foothold in COVID-weakened bodies. The results were grotesque and devastating. Doctors reported that the fungus, which invades nasal passage and sinuses, could rapidly spread to the eyes and brains in severe cases. Patients who survived only did so at a horrible cost after an operation to stop the infection. Patients' faces appeared mutilated or totally disfigured, reported dossier, noting that images of such patients were too distressing to publish. The infection would turn tissue black and necrotic. Surgeons frequently had to remove one or both eyes to save the patient's life. In some cases, parts of the jaw and facial bones were excised, leaving gaping, horrifying wounds. The fatality rates of this black fungus ran between 50% to 90%. Especially if it reached the brain. By mid-2021, thousands of COVID-recovered patients in India were afflicted. One 48-year-old woman in New Delhi, for example, suddenly lost vision in both eyes. A few weeks later, after recovering from COVID, doctors determined the black fungus had ravaged her optic nerves. They had to perform emergency surgery to remove both of her eyes to prevent the infection from killing her. It's like we were sitting on a ticking time bomb, a family said of the impossible choice. The black fungus, it added horror, added a new layer of gore to this pandemic. Victims who survived COVID-19 only to face a horrific, disfiguring infection that devoured their faces from the inside. It was a disease straight out of a nightmare, one that most of the world, fortunately, never had to witness directly, but one that left its victim forever scarred, a living testament to the pandemic's brutal ingenuity. The pandemic didn't just attack our bodies, it waged war on our minds. The enforced isolation, the relentless uncertainty, the sheer weight of it all for millions. It became a psychological crucible, forging new forms of terror. Imagine a world where the outside becomes a threat, where the very act of stepping beyond your threshold feels like a plunge into an abyss. For some, The pandemic's lockdowns were a perverse comfort, a validation of their deepest fears. But when the world tried to reopen, the true horror began. Pre-existing agoraphobia relapsed with a vengeance, trapping individuals in their homes, sometimes for years. But for others, the prolonged confinement triggered the new onset of agoraphobia, as they forgot how to navigate the outside world after months or even years of extreme isolation. One Reddit user, OKPain6024, described going from mildly socially anxious to someone who can't leave the house for months at a time, a state that has persisted for 5 years. Another, one cryptographer, detailed how their wife became utterly convinced she would die if they stopped isolating, missing her brother's wedding and the birth of her own son, communicating only through video calls. This wasn't just anxiety. It was a profound, almost animalistic retreat from a world perceived as lethal. The very fabric of their reality wrapped, leading to a chilling erosion of self. Some reported losing their touch with reality, experiencing time as a fluid, nonsensical entity, and even a complete loss of empathy. Chillingly stating they could see a person get killed in front of them and they will not blink. This isn't just a symptom, it's a terrifying glimpse into the psychological cost of a world unhinged, where the human connection that defies us simply vanish.
Losing our world isn't.
But the mind's descent didn't stop at isolation. For some, the virus itself became a key that unlocked the darkest chambers of the psyche, unleashing a torrent of new onset psychosis, terrifying delusions, and shared nightmares. Imagine waking up, the world you knew replaced by a waking nightmare. Cases emerged globally. Individuals with no prior psychiatric history suddenly plunged into severe psychosis after COVID-19 infection. A 52-year-old man became convinced he was the cause of the coronavirus pandemic. His paranoia so severe, he attempted suicide. A 45-year-old mother hospitalized with severe COVID saw terrifying visions of bugs crawling all over her, heard friends plotting, and believed she had just given birth. Another, a 34-year-old woman, experienced demonic hallucinations and apocalyptic delusions after her infection. These weren't just stress reactions. The virus itself seemed to directly assault the brain, pushing individuals into a terrifying new reality. And then there were the dreams, a global phenomenon of vivid, disturbing, often prophetic nightmares. People reported dreaming of fire rain of rocks and people screaming in terror, believing these were the warnings of impending global catastrophe. Others saw robot-android apocalypse and AI and extraterrestrial mashups taking over the world, testing humans for compliance. These weren't random. They were a collective subconscious grappling with an overwhelming, shared trauma, trying to make sense of a world that had suddenly gone utterly mad. The line between waking and dreaming blurred, leaving a lingering sense of dread that the nightmares might just be a preview of what's to come. The pandemic didn't just wrap our present. It stole our past and fractured our future. Beyond the acute breaks, a more insidious psychological impact took hold. The erosion of the self and a profound distortion of reality itself. Millions reported experiencing derealization, a disquieting sensation that the world around them was unreal, dreamlike, or disconnected. This often coincided with bewildering pandemic time skip or COVID time wrap. Days, weeks, even years seem to blur into a huge black gap. One moment it was March 2020, the next, years had simply vanished. This isn't just a trick of a memory. It's a fundamental disruption of our cognitive anchors, leaving many feeling profoundly disoriented and disconnected from their own life narratives. The individual distortion fed into a chilling societal phenomenon, a collective amnesia, a deliberate scrubbing of the pandemic's memory from public discourse. Despite millions lost, the trauma is vaguely referred to as the thing or the mess. This isn't passive forgetting. It's an active psychological defense, compounded by political motivations to downplay or rewrite the narrative. When a society refuses to remember and mourn what it endured, it risks repeating its darkest mistakes. This profound disconnect from our recent past leaves us vulnerable, unable to fully process the deep, unseen scars left by the pandemic, and perhaps unable to recognize the next threat when it emerges from the shadows. As the world retreated indoors, a new breed of predators emerged, exploiting the chaos and isolation. The pandemic didn't just create new anxieties, It provided a perfect, chilling cover for the darkest of crimes. The lockdowns meant to protect inadvertently became a shield for the sinister. Reduced public presence and strained emergency services offered a perfect cover for crimes to go undetected or disguised. Consider the haunting disappearance of Delina Czar during the early COVID-19 lockdown in Oklahoma. She posted cryptic Facebook messages claiming she was sick with COVID and heading to a remote lake to recover or to die, then vanished. Online sleuths, trapped in their own isolation, became obsessed, uncovering a strange subculture and hints of interpersonal betrayal. The case remains shrouded in chilling ambiguity, with a burnt mattress and a missing person flyer near her found shoes adding to the unsettling clues. Even more disturbing, the pandemic's rules were weaponized. In the UK, a police officer used the pretext of breached COVID guidelines to abduct and murder Sarah Everard. In North Wales, 2-year-old Ethan Evans Griffiths died from catastrophic head injuries, while a social worker's visit was limited to the doorstep due to the COVID isolation, effectively concealing the abuse. The overwhelming focus on the virus created a fog of war for criminal investigations, allowing countless tragedies to be miscategorized or simply lost in the overwhelming statistics. How many more silent victims are out there? Their stories buried by the pandemic's grim toll.
Where did you go?
The digital realm, our lifeline during lockdown, became a hunting ground. Fraudsters, like digital chameleons, adopted with terrifying speed, preying on our fears and depression. In the desperate search for protection, a market for miracle cures emerged, peddling grotesque and dangerous concoctions. A Florida family operating under the guise of the Genesis 2 Church of Health and Healing sold a toxic industrial bleach, miracle mineral solution, claiming it cured COVID-19. Drinking it was the same as drinking bleach, leading to hospitalizations and deaths. But the horror doesn't stop there. Our Australian Research Institute raised concerns about cures being sold for up to $25,000, with suggestions that they contained human blood from recovered COVID-19 patients. The depths of depravity to profit from panic are truly chilling. The pandemic accelerated the dark arts of digital deception. AI-powered deepfakes became a terrifying tool for extortion. Imagine a call from your child their voice pleading for bail money. Only it's an AI clone, harvested from a few seconds of audio from their social media. This blurring of reality is designed to trigger immediate panic, bypassing rational thoughts. Beyond this, synthetic identity fraud exploded, with AI creating entirely fake personas from stolen fragments of real data. Even children's social security numbers to file fraudulent unemployment claims worth tens of millions. The pandemic also saw a Utah fraudster sell 120,000 fake vaccine cards, even using a fake badge to trick a print shop. These aren't just crimes, they are a chilling testament to how easily our digital lives can be hijacked, our identities stolen, and our trust utterly shattered.
We are the Watchers. We see all.
When the world unhinges, some seek answers in the darkest corners of the belief. The pandemic became a breeding ground for fringe cults, elaborate conspiracies, and a terrifying descent into collective history. Fear and uncertainty are potent fertilizers for cults. The Shincheonji Church of Jesus in South Korea became a major COVID-19 hotspot, its members defying public health guidelines and resisting efforts to track the virus, believing they alone would achieve salvation. Their actions directly exacerbated the crisis, a chilling example of faith twisted into a public health threat. Even more disturbing, the Love Has Won cult, led by Amy Carlson, the mother god who claimed the pandemic was planned. They peddled toxic colloidal silver as a cure, which contributed to Carlson's mummified body being found wrapped in Christmas lights, her eyes missing. This is the grotesque reality of desperation meeting delusion. And then the ultimate betrayal, the belief that the very authorities meant to protect us were orchestrating a hidden agenda. The lab leak hypothesis that SARS-CoV-2 escaped from the Wuhan Institute of Virology gained a terrifying traction, fueled by perceived secrecy and a deep distrust of institutions. Allegations of gain-of-function research and the mysterious deletion of online database from Wuhan Institute of Virology was cited as evidence of a cover-up. Beyond the virus origin, governments' mandates themselves became targets of elaborate conspiracy theories. Lockdowns, masks, and vaccines were seen as part of a great retest, a plot by global elites to dismantle capitalism, establish totalitarian rule, or implement a corporate surveillance dystopia. This preserved suspicion, fueled by a perceived lack of transparency, created a deeply unsettling societal landscape where even necessary public health interventions were viewed through a lens of malevolent intent. As humanity retreated, the world itself seemed to shift, revealing phenomena previously hidden, or perhaps awakening something dormant. The anthropause, the global quietening of human activity, had profound and unsettling consequences. With the roar of human industry silenced, the earth began to whisper. Seismic noise, the constant vibration from our daily lives, dropped by 50%. The quietest period on record. In this unprecedented stillness, strange, low-frequency hums emerged globally, described as mechanical, moaning, or turbine-like, often heard only indoors and at night, and some caused physical symptoms, migraines, vertigo. Others remained unexplained, contributing to a chilling sense of unease. Even the angel atop the Mormon temple in Salt Lake City dropped its trumpet during an earthquake at the onset of shelter-at-home order, explained by some as a prophetic sign. Was the earth itself reacting to our absence, or were we simply finally listening?